assess your relationship with God. As compared to assessing your relationship with God.
Yeah.
Now let's invite the Prime Minister to start off the meeting.
Yeah.
Are using religion as an object to instill fear, within the prisoners itself in prison rehabilitation program. Because we believe that is absolutely wrong, it's absolutely morally or abhorrent to actually use religion as an object to instill the fear in the first place. Because we believe, ladies and gentlemen, that problem right now is when you use the object of God to instill fear in prisoners, there's much more harm, ladies and gentlemen, than benefits. Because we believe that even if, yes, we do agree to the fact that religion does provide good values, ladies and gentlemen, but then by using the object of God in the first place, ladies and gentlemen, the effects of it is not really long lasting, ladies and gentlemen, rather than just teaching general values in the first place, ladies and gentlemen. Because right now, on the idea of religion itself, we believe that on government side here is that we do not stop people from practicing their religion, we do not stop these prisoners from practicing the religion that they believe in, meaning that they are free to practice it. Meaning we should not use it to instill the fear of it, telling these prisoners that if you do this wrong, you will get the effect, you will get the punishment of it in the afterworld, ladies and gentlemen, something example like that, ladies and gentlemen. Because we believe that we are fine, ladies and gentlemen, with the values that are taught by religion. But our problem is with using the figure of God itself, meaning that to tell these people that there is God, there is someone out there, someone up in the clouds that will punish you for your wrongdoings. Some people believe that it's absolutely wrong to actually instill the fear in the first place, because we believe that we should teach people with values instead of just instilling fear in the first place, ladies and gentlemen. So what does government? So what do we want? Government side want to achieve at the end of today's debate? We believe they want to achieve the effects of principal state rehab by there is no dependency on religion when because they will have a longer lasting effect. Meaning that we want to instill the fear, instill this. Teaching them values, teaching them general values in the first place. Okay, so what does opposition side have to prove to us in today's debate? First of all, they have to prove to us why religion and the figure of God itself is necessary in rehabilitating prisoners. No, because we believe that there is no dire need to use the object of God in rehabilitating prisoners. So we believe that just by teaching general values, because now we can see in status quo, you have prison support groups, ladies and gentlemen. We do teach general values, we do have counselors, ladies and gentlemen. So there is no really dire need in the first place to use religion and the figure of God to just rehabilitate these prisoners, when we can take the alternative or just teaching general values in the first place. Because we believe that we ourselves as humans, we can't really prove the existence of God or the figure of God in the first place, because different people have different perspectives, ladies and gentlemen. Different people have different beliefs, meaning that we might believe in a certain God, ladies and gentlemen, and when we try to rehabilitate people in these prisons by using up in the clouds to punish this, we can't really prove to them that there is going to be punishment at the end of the day, because we believe that it's better to teach values. Why, listen? First of all, I'm going to prove to you the comparison of why is it better to teach values than to use religion in rehabilitating prisoners in the first place. Because first of all, ladies and gentlemen, when we teach values, ladies and general values, we are actually giving them realistic results, ladies and gentlemen, rather than using religion in the first place. Because when you use religion, you tell them if you do something wrong, you will get the punishment in the afterworld, ladies and gentlemen. Example as that, ladies and gentlemen. But then if you use values, you actually teach them saying that if you do this, then the effects of it you get. You're not respected by society and all this, something that we believe that is much more realistic. Meaning that once we believe that the harm is worse if we use religion in the first place, because once a prisoner is released into society, there might be a possibility that the prisoner himself loses prison in the prison rehabilitation program in the first place. When we teach values, that's why even though the prisoner can go out and lose the religion, but then his values are still being instilled in himself in the first place. So what are we going to bring to you today? First of all, we're going to talk to you about the vulnerability of prisoners, and my second speaker will talk to you about how we want to teach by value, not by fear, and third, on the abuse of religious teachings. So first of all, on the idea of vulnerability of prisoners, on the first level, we believe that when you use religion to rehabilitate these prisoners, you're actually taking advantage of prisoners when they are at their lowest. Because we believe that when prisoners are in prison rehabilitation program, they are very vulnerable because really they need hope. They need people to give them hope, ladies and gentlemen. They need people to support them, to tell them that there is time for them to turn over a new leaf, ladies and gentlemen, to tell them it's fine. Yes, you might have done mistakes from the past, and it's okay because you can turn over a new leaf and you can move on with your life, ladies and not only promote your religion in the first place, but also to interfere in their individual principles. Because yes, maybe an individual who is the prisoner in there does not believe in religion, ladies and gentlemen, but then you're interfering by using religion in the first place, ladies and gentlemen, and you are also indirectly promoting that religion in specifically, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, on the second analysis of the vulnerability of prisoners, we believe on the idea of psyche of the prisoner, ladies and gentlemen, because we believe that the prisoner will do anything to get out, ladies and gentlemen, because we believe that the prison, yes, in status quo right now, the prison authority deems of prisoner if that person is fit enough to be released, ladies and gentlemen, but then by using religion as the object to rehabilitate these prisoners in the first place, we believe that there is no way to assess this individual itself based on religion, because we believe that this idea itself is not feasible, because you can't assess someone based on that person's relationship with God, and that person's relationship in that person's performance in religion. You can't really assess that person itself. You see if that person has learned from the rehabilitation in the first place. We believe that the problem right now with government sees is that using the object of God to rehabilitate prisoners itself is something that's abhorrently wrong, ladies and gentlemen, something that we should not do. Yes, we believe in the values that's taught by religion. We believe in general values that should be taught towards these prisoners in the first place, but not the figure of God. Thank you.
It's not about rehab which helps the prisoner. Okay, it's not about one type of rehab which helps the prisoner. It's about a plethora of types of rehabilitations which we provide to the prisoner, and we allow the prisoner to pick and choose whether or not they want to take one of the religions as a rehabilitation program, or to go for the normal standard rehabilitation program with nothing to do with religion. We are perfectly fine with that. Now, under our paradigm, this is what it's going to do. Number one, we're not going to force them to pick a religion. There's no such thing, okay? You can pick any religion you want, or you don't pick a religion at all. Number two, there's always an opt-out program. If you find any dissatisfaction while in that program, while you are in this religious rehab program, then they can always opt out. There's the check and balance. Government is pushing for how if in an Islamic country we are only going to teach Islam to all the prisoners no matter what religion they support. That is really false and dangerous. Instead, we are going to allow religious leaders to come in and to tell all the prisoners about their religion and why they should pick their religion, and then the prisoners can pick and choose whether or not which religion they want to pick. So that's perfectly fine. But now, coming out from side government, it's really dangerous because number one, they're using God as an object of fear. Okay, they say that God is a bad thing in prisoners, saying that in the name of God you're going to hell. Now, this is really dangerous coming from a government, because isn't that similar parallel to how in status quo we are indoctrinating religious teachings onto children? We're telling children that now if you don't listen to us, if you don't listen to us and listen to this religion, if you don't follow the religious rules, you'll go to hell as well. Isn't that just as dangerous? Sit down. Next, when they talk about how it's better to teach values, intrinsic moral values, one, we tell you that in religion you can also learn all these moral values in religion, because the religion itself is teaching moral values. The religion itself is based off moral values, so there's no difference. If a prisoner wants to pick these moral values, then wants to learn a religion and go rehab through religion, we see that is perfectly fine. Then sit down. Then when the next sentence which came out is, once you lose your religion, that somehow means that once you come out of prison and you don't want to practice your religion, somehow that means that you no longer have any values. You're not going to have any moral values, and we don't see any causal link between that. So I hope that our Deputy Prime Minister can come out saying with anything better than that. Next, when you talk about how the prisoners are vulnerable and they're promoting and the state is promoting a certain region, we say no. We already told you in our mechanism is going to be we're going to give them if using religion as an excuse, they can leave the prison early, have a lighter prison sentence. We say no, once you're charged, you're charged. There's no such thing as because you picked a religion and became more holy, somehow that a 10-year prison sentence became a 2-year prison sentence. But before I move on to my substantive, yes.
With that being said, are you saying that even by good behavior, you wouldn't actually reduce the time of him being in prison also?
Yeah. We see that good behavior, yes, good behavior will reduce the time, but not something so massive like religion. Okay, and even so, if someone does pick a religion and is on good behavior because of that religion, then we see that is fine. Have a lighter prison sentence because you are having good behavior. So please think more about your PIs before you actually say them. Now, next, my substantives for you today are simple. 2, why people should have a choice, and why people should have a choice when picking their religion, their form of rehabilitation. Prisoners which come into prison. Now, number 1, how people should have a choice, because we need a plethora of rehabilitations, because everyone is different. No one person is same, and rehabilitation is something so personal and so intrinsic to yourself, where you want to forgive not just other people, but you want to realize that you made mistakes, you yourself made mistakes, and you want to forgive yourself as well. And we see that the only way that this can happen is when it's personal, when they are choosing it themselves, when they're not coerced to one form of rehabilitation program, but when they have a choice to pick, if they think that picking a religion and going through this religious program is better, and going through this religious program can help them find God or find nirvana, so they can forgive themselves better, then we see that it is better, because we understand that rehab with religion and without religion brings the same benefit. People would need to find a religion before they can actually find themselves and forgive themselves from their mistakes. It's not the same as a counselor. Some people might think that sitting with a counselor and just throwing out all your mistakes isn't going to help, because you think that the counselor isn't good enough, or the counselor doesn't understand you. But when you think that God understands you, and sit down, when God understands you and and you think that God is on your side and you have moral support, that is when the person can have a proper rehabilitation. Sit down. Now, next, when I'm talking about my second point, how this is going to protect the rights of religious prisoners, because religious prisoners, yes, fine, we still allow them to practice their religion in prison. But we're going to take it a step further, because what's the point of practicing your religion in prison when you're not allowed to mix with other prisoners about your practice and about your own religion? You cannot share information, you cannot have discussions, you cannot have support groups to talk to each other. If you can't have because a community is so important, when people who are born and raised with the same ideology, the same teachings, were taught the same way, that if you practice religion like that, and you're doing good deeds, that's the important part. Then when everyone's together and can build and can progress together and can find themselves together as a whole and forgive themselves, have rehabilitation together, standing by the same reasons, then we see that is perfectly fine, because these religious prisoners are more comfortable talking to people who they know, who they think can understand them, which are people which went to church or went to or practiced Islam when they were outside of prison, and when they came into prison, they wanted to continue their practice. Now, so this entire program is not about, in conclusion, this entire program, rehabilitation program, is not it's not about religion telling you how much wrong you did and you're going to hell. Yourself and you understand that you made mistakes, and that is when you won't go to hell. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, what side opposition today has successfully proven to us in many different ways of choice is that prisoners should believe in this guy in the sky who's going to forgive them for their wrongs and make whatever they've done absolute, and that we should just make sure that these individuals have a choice of which guy in the sky to believe in. That's all I got from their speech today. Now, let's get into the dynamics of what they said. Today, what they've come up here to do and said is basically this. You see, you can... We're giving you a choice of the guy in the sky of whom you want to believe in. So it's better. And that was a one-liner. All he said was, it's better, it's better, it's better. Prove to us how it's better. Prove to us how it beats value, instilling regular values and regular values from support groups or counselors as to why we need this guy in the sky, as to why we need the figure of God in these prisoners' rehabilitation programs, because you fail to fulfill your burden. Basically this, as to show us why God is so dearly needed in prison rehabilitation. Sit down, friends. Now someone, see, bad enough you can't prove to us the existence of this guy, and now you're trying to make prisoners in rehabilitation where they're trying to become good. Is one thing is you're instilling fear in them of this guy who's going to punish them, but at the same time you're telling this guy also loves you with all his heart and that whatever you do is fine. That's the type of psychological harms you're putting upon these prisoners, especially at their time of vulnerability. Need something realistic at the time where they need it the most, and you're pushing this ideology upon them. Now, sit down. Moving on, you come up here and say that different religions you can choose and that a plethora of religions should be given out to these people in rehab. I don't see why. You haven't justified as to, okay, fine, there's a choice, so what? So what? After that, what? I've got a choice and I choose it and everything's going to become fine. Sit down. No. Now, you come up here and, okay, you want me to clarify so much on losing your religion. Given the example that you did not understand, we pointed out to you that an individual coming out of prison, something he so believed in and something that got him through that dark time in his life, what if when he goes out into the real world and suddenly something causes him to doubt that guy in the sky and just forget about that guy in the sky? You see, the reason he learned the religion in the first place is because he was attracted to the concept of God, God's forgiveness and God's different ways of dealing with things. Now, what happens when he loses? Sit down, sit down. For that specific God in the first place. We see once he loses faith in that guy, he's going to throw everything out without reasonable doubt. Because why do something for a guy at that position of time when he's already lost his religion? He will be questioning this. Why do something for a guy who hasn't done anything for me back? Or in any circumstances, any different questions, as long as he loses his religion at that point of the time, he can logically throw everything out. As compared to prison support groups and counseling. Because we see, sit down, when we instill in you good values and we inculcate into you proper values, how to live in society and everything through prison and everything, we see that it's not a risk as compared to making you believe in God only to be good, as compared to being good because being good is good. Now, moving on. You come up here and talk to us about religious prisoners. Sit down. And we saw this as a... Sorry, I thought you were going to stand up. It's okay. See, you come up here and talk about religious prisoners and you say, about religion. We should have the freedom to express. No one's denying you that, right? Right now, you've misunderstood the motion. The motion clearly sit down. Later. We say the motion clearly states that this house will ban the use of religion in prison rehabilitation programs. And that's exactly what I'm going to prove today to you in our substantives, because we're going to tell you exactly why the two have to be separated and how religion is going to bring a detrimental harm when you put it into rehab. First argument. Teaching by value and not by fear. What we want is to inculcate proper values in you through discourse, through support groups, by literally teaching you that it's good to be good. Alright, so instilling fear. Our disposition towards this is simple. Instilling fear of a higher power upon an individual just for him to be good. And if he actually is good, that doesn't make him good. That makes him scared of a divine punishment which is going to happen in the afterworld. Something unrealistic. Dependency. Alright, they need something realistic, and we say that to make an individual good by instilling religion in them is flawed, because then the individual isn't really good. He's doing it for what? For God. Someone you cannot prove existed. Okay, fine, take one.
Okay, Mario, so you're basically telling me all the religious people in the world are not actually good, but they are doing good because they fear God?
If you think about it, yes, a majority do. Why else do people not commit heinous crimes and everything? Because religion dictates that in the end you will be sent to the fires of hell where you will burn for eternity. And that's what we say. If you are only doing good for that, we say it as a flawed mechanism, because you should be good to ensure the harmony in society, for stuff, realistic stuff that continues the daily life. Like I said, do good because it is good. Sit down. Now, moving on to my second substantive for today, on the abuse of the forgiveness system. Forgiven. Christianity states that as long as you go for confession, your sins will be wiped clean out of your sin book. Alright, we see this as an avenue for individuals to abuse circumstances like this. Why? Because if it's anything now, because inculcating it into prison rehab, where you're trying to make them not do it again, at the same time you're teaching them, but it's okay if you can do it again, because you will be forgiven, that Jesus will wipe you clean of your sin. Because now you're responsible for their actions, because now they've learned it in prison rehab that God is forgiving. Now we started trying to believe that you shouldn't do it again because you end up in jail, or you shouldn't do it, but at the same time you're telling them they can do it because Jesus is going to forgive them of their sins. We see there can be an abuse there. We see that can lead to so many different problems and second-time offenders. So in conclusion, what we want are the longer effects of principally realistic rehabilitation, where there isn't a dependency on religion, because you believe in God, you don't throw everything out. 1. You don't abuse the forgiveness system. 2. And you, at that point of time, right, where we see individuals needed something, right, you gave them solid grounding. Say that these things are good and it's proven in society, unlike telling them, oh, this man in the sky is going to approve of what you do. Thank you.
Okay. It is particularly offensive when Mario comes up and tells us that, yeah, whatever that your religious leaders have taught you is false. We don't think that this is the proper rhetoric that we want to portray to any society in the whole, right? And we think that if it works, it works. We don't care whether or not if their religious values are something that you shouldn't do or shouldn't portray. Objective, right? And even if you believe in God, or even you're atheist, if you find that your value is false, or you believe it's false, you can throw it away. We think that this exists under both religion and also, whatever your non-religious counseling is. We think that this is not mutually exclusive, and this applies under both paradigms. But the marginal benefit that we've talked to you about that you never ever rebutted or responded to was this, right? That yes, we understand that there needs to be a form of rehabilitation, but we need to allow people to choose what form of rehabilitation is best for them. Because we understand that people who've been brought up in religious communities or households which understand like religion the most, right? And especially when they need this form of support, going out and rehabilitating themselves or forgiving themselves for committing that crime, we think it's especially important to allow prison to have rehabilitation centers that use religion as a form of rehabilitation. A few rebuttals before I go into my sentence. Firstly, on the idea that, we are going to have a regression of values, and then, all of a sudden, that if you believe in God, you move out of prison, and all of a sudden, that God is disproved, that everything else and all the values that you learn is disproved, right? Really, guys, it's not that simple. We don't think that you're going to stop doing the values that you think is good just because God isn't there. We think that if you think that value is good in itself and it's intrinsic and personal in your belief, we think that you will continue doing that value anyway, right? And especially when you don't sit down, Alfred. Okay, especially when you don't know what, like if you only have a binary, right, on how you can teach people what is a good value, we think it's extremely harmful because you don't cater towards all the other individuals who don't understand your binary, right? Who don't understand that yes, only counseling can work, or that the person talking to me is actually trying to help me. Some people don't, right? That's why we're trying to have if suddenly you come out and present and your God doesn't exist, that suddenly you lose all your values. You think that this isn't true and this has been proven. But then all the other tons of religious people who have become atheists in the first place say, "Damn, Mario, I'm not going to let you do it." Okay. So secondly, also going to the idea of coercion, right? Really, because this is also something that we already highlight to you, which doesn't even matter. Because this came out in first speaker, right? And how coercion might exist, and that preachers are going to preach that, hey, God is false, that God is going to God is going to put you in hell if you do something wrong. We already characterize you that no, this is not what's happening in rehabilitation centers in the first place. Rehabilitation centers show and tell you and provide rehabilitation by saying towards the prisoners that yes, we know you've done something wrong, but here, like, God is willing to forgive you, and that's something that's so important to certain prisoners, right? Where someone else, like a higher being, is community of prisoners change to become better people, right? And this is the marginal benefit that we've talked about from the start. If they're going to ban all forms of religious rehabilitation, they're also disallowing people like this who do believe in the divine being, who do actually look up towards their gods and really, really believe in these people, to lose that form of faith. We think that's extremely harmful, right? But before I move on to my point, yes?
So if that's the case, if religion so works, why can't you practice it on your own? Why does it have to be in your rehabilitation centers if it works so well?
Okay, sure, it works for certain people, but other people need support, right? Just the same as any form of rehabilitation that you're trying to work for. You need to have, let's say, maybe it's a preacher talking to you, or let's say you have someone you can confess your sins to. This is the exact same thing why we need religious rehabilitation centers. Doesn't that prove my argument? Okay, secondly, the first and most important substance is unimportant, right? And this is only going to enforce the loss of support that religious societies actually contribute back towards society. But let's look at it in the first level of analysis, right? How society themselves believe that religion is intrinsic and important, right? And the right to religion still exists in prisons themselves, and you can still practice your religion. And this is also seen when governments give prisoners their last rights to whatever religion they want to, right? And this shows that government does actively support that, yes, if you do believe in a religion, that you should be able to practice it, right? But what happens when you take away this the right for people to go to religious rehabilitation? Essentially, you show towards them that, yes, government is saying that religion isn't as important towards these people and themselves. That we are attacking your religion. We don't think that your religion has any benefit towards these prisoners, right? We think this is an extremely harmful rhetoric that you are trying to paint towards society themselves. Because these religious societies have been example is that they provide communities or even jobs or even soup kitchens to help prisoners who are in need, right? We think like these are the sides of support that the religious societies will retract once you take away their possibility of them having new people come into their religion, right? Or even trying to just help people. reconciling their faith. We think that this is extremely important when it comes to understanding that governments cannot support all these prisoners when they come out of jail, and especially when governments cannot cater to and provide jobs for all these people. So this is when religious societies play an extremely important role in society, right? Where they are the ones who comes and covers over what the government is failing to do. Like they are the ones who are trying to ensure that these prisoners don't go back and commit a second crime, right? We tell you that this is the conclusion towards our case, right? That if you do this, you lose that form of support, and essentially create and you reduce the amount of possibility that we protect these prisoners, ensure that they don't commit a second crime. And the duty of rehabilitation always falls under the stance that if these people don't commit the crime again, then it works, right? We tell you that if religious rehabilitation helps people, and it does prove a marginal benefit, and there's no form of coercion, we definitely think that you should allow these people to preach and pray towards God.
Yes. Yeah.
So basically what we see here today is that we on the government side want to prove to you on the practicality of the programs. It is the program on itself, not basically banning it in all prisons in the world. That's one thing they misunderstood on the side opposition there already. We are also proposing that without the use of religion in itself, we should probably propose a lot of harms in the case of the use of religion, even though it's just a form of a choice for the prisoners to choose. We believe that this choice should not be there at all due to the harms which my leader of opposition and my Prime Minister and my Deputy Prime Minister have already shown to you today. Why is this possible? As my Prime Minister have already said, is vulnerability of the prisoners. You're taking advantage of the prisoners through religion. You're promoting something that a lot of people wouldn't accept. A lot of people that are not in your religion would not accept on people who are actually weak in their mind because they are already thrown into prison for something wrong they do. One. Second is the psyche of the prisoners. Wouldn't actually daring enough to do whatever is against the law. One, if you teach religion in that way, jihad is part of Islam. That means somehow that prisoner is a radicalized Islam. They want to hear more about radicalized Islam. Wouldn't that promote much more dangers towards the world like Christianity? They say as long as you tell your sins, you actually get repent. Like my Deputy Prime Minister said, if you actually kill someone, as long as you have said that you kill someone, all your sins will be wiped out from the book. Wouldn't that be radicalized for them to do more bad things since they know through religion itself they wouldn't be wrong? Before I move on to my DPM, yes.
Okay, the exact commandments in Christianity or religion itself teaches you the exact same values, let's say in your counseling session. We think that this provides for both. Religion isn't going to teach you to and say that killing someone is okay.
We're not saying that the values which are in religion is wrong. It's practical values that we have picked out, which is practical for these prisoners because they can see realistic results. They can see realistically that these things are good for them, how it will affect them within this life. But what you're proposing today is something beyond. They get something beyond that. How is that possible to prove that? And especially for them to be in a radicalized group. Despite all the commandments, they say, I should not kill, I should not do this, I should not do that, whatsoever not. But as long as I admit my sins, I will be clean of it. So that in that case, since they are a radicalized group, a prisoner, the psyche of the prisoner as a radicalized group compared to the normal community outside, we shouldn't profess religion in these rehabilitation programs. Not to say that we are banning them, not to say that we are punishing them from professing their religion among themselves with their parties. It's just that when they are in the rehabilitation program, there shouldn't be any use of religion. faith. He will lose all values. One thing Yongshen said is that if you believe that value is good, then you continue to use it. So why connect it to religion? Because when you connect it to religion, you believe that I want to do this because of God. I am good because I'm God. Because of God. I'm God-fearing. So I believe that when God does all this, when I do all these things, God will love me. What happens if you lose faith in God? All these values are linked to God. So in that sense itself, the link towards good values and God, since I don't believe in God anymore, I believe that these good values are not a value to me anymore, because I'll say that, oh, God is actually not good for me. So these values automatically will not be good for me, because they obviously are a radicalized group. Please, the next thing that say we should do something realistic over something religion provides. Something religion needs someone at the right state of mind, at the right time to actually think about, rather than these people in the at their psychological level. So we should do something realistic which they can relate to right now, because usually religion is something that we can relate to if we are not that radicalized. Because when we are radicalized, most of the things that religion profess will actually be counteract, like how the jihadist group like Al-Qaeda say that we should defend for our country, we should attack America because they want to invade our country. So that is a radicalized group among the community. So in that case, we want to stop this use of religion within the prison rehabilitation. We've proved a lot of harms in the first place. Then the opposition come and say that we have a choice. We want to give them the choice, but we don't believe in that choice at all due to all the harms that I've told you. Then they say they want to protect these people where they feel socially connected to other prisoners because they can talk. Okay, we give you the right to talk. It's just that the people holding these rehabilitation programs wouldn't use Jesus is a Messiah and this and that, but only the trainers within the rehabilitation program will not talk about it. That's why use of religion in prison rehabilitation program, which has been highlighted by my DPM already just now. Then they also want to say that these people need religion and we deprive it from them. Well, no, we just don't want to inculcate this in our rehabilitation program. So what? Yeah, before my last
point. Do you think it will be less effective for people who need the religion to get rehabilitation, to get rehab? What if these people need the religion?
If these people really need the religion, and you say that these people are religiously background, wouldn't that the religion itself protect them from doing all those crimes? That means their hold onto this religion wouldn't be that strong. So what is your point to prove that religion is so effective in that way, rather than practical, realistic ways that actually they can see and has been proven with a choice, is giving a choice to the prisoners, which possibly and will detrimentally harm these prisoners, for they are radicalized group within a community. Second, we also have proved to you how these factors as a prisoner, and how the prisoners, there's a chances where the prisoners will lose faith in God, how the link towards these good values to God, when they lose the faith in God, they will automatically lose those values as a whole. Then the last thing I show you, that the misinterpretation of religion, how they might misinterpret it, for they are a radicalized group among the community because they are brave enough to commit a crime against the law, and for that I proudly propose.
Yeah.
Okay. We find it hilarious that we have a side government who actually thinks that in prison, when we're trying to rehabilitate them, we're going to teach you stuff that we don't teach to other people in society, which is we should, like Al-Qaeda, we should bomb these people to protect our country. That's the most stupid thing that they can assume, because we aren't good. If we don't teach normal citizens about all these radical stuff, we're not going to teach prisoners who are already hard radical all these stupid things so that they can become even more radical. That just doesn't make sense. Right. Three issues for you today, Madam Chair. One, which side provides better rehabilitation? Second issue, whether teaching God is instilling fear and whether it's a good thing or bad thing in the end. And thirdly, the repercussions that will follow after this debate. But values because of God, we do stuff for God, and then when we go out, suddenly something that may happen, we may not believe in God in something, then we won't. I didn't draw any logical link, but I'm going to assume that they're saying that we won't hold the values that we have anymore. Well, that is mutually exclusive under your paradigm too, because when you learn about values that basically we already know, like, yeah, when we learn the values that is in Bible, when we fit it in our paradigm, their values that they have can also be taken away. Like, if they feel unfair, they can say, no, I don't believe in this value anymore. Therefore, what they said about that is mutually exclusive. It also happens under their paradigm. It doesn't, and it's better under our paradigm. Secondly, about how that we will teach them about all this radical stuff, and then now everyone will become terrorists and join Al Qaeda and all. First of all, it's a prison, it's rehabilitation. We're going to teach them good things, how to love God, not fear God, how to love God, why we should do stuff for Him, and therefore rehabilitate. Not, hey, God says that we should kill these people, God says we should follow. How it doesn't really work, because if I do a bad thing, I can confess. Then you might as well not let normal society do it, because then they won't learn. Because confession is about giving your trust to God, which we are going to teach them to love so much. Confession helps you. Confession isn't just about saying, okay, I did this and then I'm God. Confession is about repent. It's how you repent, and confession will actually help you know that you did your mistake. That's the main reason you're actually saying it in the first place. Therefore, that won't really happen, right? Before I move on, yes.
Can you please explain to us what really are the harms if we do not use religion in prison?
Sit down. Obviously, you didn't hear my whole government side, but let me just sort of reiterate what they said. If we don't use if you guys are trying to say that there's no dying, there obviously is the dying as what they said. Obviously, teaching the values doesn't really work, because which criminal doesn't know that what they did is bad? Which criminal doesn't know that I shouldn't have killed that man? Obviously, that these criminals know that these values way of getting towards them and all. And so, sit down. And secondly, also, religion is the dying league, because sometimes values just don't work. We need other avenues. We need more choices for these people, because if we force these people, because people, when they rehabilitate, when they're happy, when they are understanding and all, if people don't want to learn values that they already know in moral classes every day, then obviously we have to provide other avenues for them. That's the idea that you guys didn't understand. Sit down. First question in this debate. Which side is better for rehabilitation? Because our side, people generally need to be understanding, be open when they rehabilitate. When we teach Bible studies, when we have a class and a preacher telling you are wrong, that's when you become more open, more vulnerable to actually teaching. It's not vulnerable to any other bad things, because these teachings were not going to say, hey, you should join the Al Qaeda, like what he's trying to say. These teachings teach the values that you guys want, but in a better way, in a more understanding way. Look, if you're not happy with counseling, we need at class, then you obviously wouldn't want to learn, then the whole rehabilitation won't happen in the first place, right? Religion is the next best thing, because people who opt into it would think that if I have sinned, the best way to forgive myself is by preaching to the Lord, is by saying sorry to the Lord. Because even if with this value and all these classes where you learn values, right, if you're still angry at yourself and you can't find any avenue to forgive yourself and receive inner closure, then the rehabilitation doesn't exist under their paradigm. Under our paradigm, the rehabilitation, the type of inner closure that they have happens under our paradigm, right? No, sit down. And then suddenly, even on an even if basis, right? Suddenly, apparently, everyone doesn't do sins and crimes because they fear God. Apparently, God isn't real, and we just fear that we will kena from Him, that we will suffer from our sins and be burned in hell, right? Look, if that is what keeps us from doing any crimes, we see that the purpose of prison, which is to better under our paradigm, because the fear that you guys hate so much is actually keeping the thing that you guys love so much, which is not to not do the crime ever again. Second, and then on your side, right, when you teach values, it really happens in status quo, right? I mean, we all learn values. We all know if I slap him in the face, that's a bad thing. We all know that if I stab the guy, if I rob the guy, that's a bad thing. Obviously, those values didn't help him at all. Teaching them what they already know doesn't help at all. Second issue, using government as an object of fear. Like, no, Bibles, we don't say God is a tyrannical man who will kill you. We don't say God will see you, because you guys make a few, like, you guys also trying to clash against each other, but you say we can confess, and on the other hand, we will go to hell if we do our sins and we'll like fear God. Because if you can confess, then you won't fear God anymore, because you know that He has forgiven you, and then you can find innovation for rehabilitation. Rehab only happens when you respect Him, not when you respect Him and you paint God in, because if you paint God in a negative light, they won't believe any. When these people change, therefore it instills a good positive thing, saying that I can change if I want to change. So, and also, and again, even if we do it because we fear Him, we think it's extremely justified because it meets the angles that both of us want. Third, the repercussions, right? The prisoners who opted in, I will explain, they'll probably be rehabilitated. The people who didn't join, maybe when they see these people having so much fun in their prayer meetings and stuff like that, maybe they will join in, they'll also be rehabilitated. And these two people and these two groups together will help. It's better because then better support groups will come. They can have discourse on why they did wrong, what can we do next, and also it's better under our paradigm. And thirdly, society. And thirdly, the repercussions to society, because normally when they wouldn't accept these prisoners when they get out, they will have a stigmatization against them. So these prisoners are disenfranchised. But now that these prisoners are actually inside their groups, they are in churches, they are in actually have support from other people saying you did the right thing, good job, therefore don't do it again, stuff like that. Because if you go out and you don't have any support we see that it's very harmful. With that, I'm asking.
Okay. Here we have a side government who doesn't understand how important it is for a person who is religious to have that religion and is able to use that religion to rehabilitate themselves, or for an individual to choose himself or herself what type of rehabilitation program that they want. Okay, a few issues in today's debate and why we win, why side opposition wins the debate, right? First, on the first provides a better choice, and thirdly, for the marginal benefit and the harms that we have, right? First, on the first idea, right, is religion even any good for rehab? They obviously try to come out and say that it isn't, right? That no, religion, believing in a higher entity is a bad thing in general or intrinsically, right? We think that this isn't true, proven by the tons and millions and billions of people who believe in a higher being and isn't committing crime, right? We think that it's not the higher being's fault, or some people believing in that fault in the first place, and this is something that we talked about anyway, right? Is that the values that you learn sometimes are intrinsic in nature, right? And the people who believe in God from the start, or who are religiously indoctrinated since young, are most likely understand the religious rehabilitation in the first place, right? We tell you if these people choose that religious rehabilitation because they understand that, yes, I've been brought up this way, I probably understand that this is the best way to rehabilitate myself. Why aren't you allowing them to, right? We're not, obviously, they want, right? And this is the moving into the second issue about choice, right? When there's no response at all coming from them until the third speaker, right, about how we are providing on off a plethora of choices to ensure that people can rehabilitate in the best way. But what they talked about was, no, we don't want to have choices at all. We only want some objective person sitting in your counselor sitting in a room and telling you how you should think. But no, we tell you that this isn't the best way towards some people, right? Some people feel like they need a divine intervention, or some people feel that they want to believe in that. And when we think that Maria, if you don't get it, it's okay, okay? When people believe in a God, and they really, like they actually believe in the doctrines, right? And they want to move on and become a better person, let them be. We think that this is why this is a marginal benefit here, right? So moving on into the marginal benefit and choice, and this is something that is extremely important that they never responded to as well, because we told you the one to succeed in that rehabilitation, right? But secondly, we also told you this, right? That having a plethora of choices is good towards prisoners, because prisoners can now choose, and they can obviously go to ones that they like most. This is something that they never responded to at all. All they said was, oh, God was bad, God was bad. We don't think that God is bad when it teaches you to become a better person, guys. But lastly, let's look at the harms, right? And this is something that is extremely important, and we also provided you, as in my speech and Ian's speech, right? When we talked to you about, one, that religious societies will now retract themselves from providing that support that they would have provided in the first place towards prisoners who come out of prison or after rehabilitation, right? Because obviously you're trying to subjugate, or you're trying to condemn these religious societies, where you paint and you create a rhetoric saying that, yes, we don't want you to participate in helping us in any way at all, as even if, you know, a large population of your prisoners are religious or want that religious rehabilitation in nature. Up was this, that, oh, if your fear is tied to God and your values are tied to God, then you automatically lose them when you know you disbelieve in God. We already rebutted that, responded to that so many times, right? We told you that if this were true, that religious people who became atheists would just be heathens and kill everyone in the world and lose all their values, right? But this isn't true at all. That the values that you learn, if you think they are intrinsically good, you will keep these values, whether or not you stop believing in God or not. So, in the whole of this case, right, if you want prisoners who are able to choose their best rehabilitation, and you want a rehabilitation that actually works, side with side.
See, on the motion that this House would ban the use of religion in rehabilitation, what side opposition today have failed to do is two things. One, understand the motion that we need a separation, understand our case actually, that we need a separation between religion and the usage of religion in rehabilitation. And two, they fail to prove their burden of why it's a dire need to have religion in rehabilitation. On our side, we've told you how it's harmful first, and I told you how there is absolutely no need for religion, because if they want to say that it's mutually exclusive and everything, it coincides with our case, because the crux of what they're trying to say is take religion, so at the same time you learn the values, right? That's why we say learn the values straight. You don't need that part of God to come along with that values as a driving force. We say that status quo can work. They're giving you the values direct rehabilitation, and we've never deprived you throughout the whole case. We've never deprived you of the right to practice your religion. It's not wrong. We're just saying when it comes to rehabilitation, you don't need to have both as a dishonest driving force and a motivation for you to be good. We say be good on your own terms, and that's the purpose of our rehabilitation, to make you good all in all, not just because you're afraid of God, of that guy in the sky. Now basically, if religion so worked under your paradigm, right, you say that religion works. If religion so worked, why can't you practice it on your own? Why do you need it in rehabilitation centers? Because it's not like you cannot practice it on your own. Have discourse among your Christian buddies or your Muslim buddies about your religion. So we don't really see their problem with our case. Thus, they haven't fulfilled their burden of telling us why there is a need to have God alongside your rehabilitation. Why can't you? We've come up here and talk to you about the harms, which they have not touched on. How we cannot take advantage of you when you're vulnerable by using God against you in order for you to be good. We say it's a dishonest way and a dishonest method of making you trying to be good, and we say there is a solution to it, so that when you figure this all out, you realize that we did not use God as a thing against you. thus causing you to not lose your religion once you get out of jail, because the realization of this can hit you once you come out of jail. We see we need an honest disposition to make you good. Like I said, and I'll repeat once more, be good because it's good, not because of the guy in the sky. Moving on, we talk to you about instilling values and not teaching you by fear. Already pointed out very well, might I say, by outside of the house. We say that you shouldn't be afraid of someone only to be good. Moving on, we say you can abuse forgiveness. Yes, no, I say that God tells me I can kill people, but as long as I feel it, as long as I repent so dearly in my heart and feel bad about it, I will be forgiven. Anyone can pull off a fast. Anyone can make it seem as if they feel so bad. You cannot assess your relationship with God. That's exactly why we don't want to inculcate it into your rehabilitation centers. We see support groups and regular in daily life. We say we can assess how good you are through psychological checks, but who can read what you have between God? So as a conclusion, religion can still exist in prisoners' lives. We just, in our paradigm, all we're saying is we don't want it being used as a thing to rehabilitate you. And that's exactly what they've missed in today's debate. Regardless of the false argumentation coming from their side, where they say we should give them a choice. When give them a choice, okay, I question them, so what? No response. Give them a choice for what? To cannot practice their right to religious freedom. We never said they couldn't. So for all these reasons, right, in understanding the real motion and the real debate today as to why there is a need for God, they have failed to fulfill their burden, and we tell you that there are harms when you put the both together. So separate them and leave rehab and religion at religion. Thank you.
Oi?